Hello, everybody. We're back for another episode of FPL's Ones to Watch. We're here this week with Benji, who is an up-and-coming rising talent within the Rainbow Six Siege scene. Battled his way through Challenger League and now is in the NAL playing for Mirage, who in their first season got top 4. Hello, Benji. How are you?
Doing good, Tanner. How are you?
Doing great. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background here? You are a rising talent within Rainbow Six Siege, and you kind of just came out of nowhere for some of the fans that only really watch Pro League and, just out of nowhere, really.
So I switched from console. I played console from like Dustline to Grimsky. So I switched to PC. I think the exact like month and date was like November 11th, 2018. I was like scrolling through my Twitter and found that out. But yeah, so like less than 3 years. I played T3 for a while on some different teams. Then I ended up joining up with Braction, and we kind of grinded all the way to CL, and that was my first season with Shook Squad. Did pretty decent in Shook Squad, but like we didn't really place that high. I think we got like 6th, maybe. I don't even remember. But after Shook Squad, Thomas hit me up. We started Rent Free. I played with them for my second CL season. I got dropped from Rent Free after we placed second against The Last Dance. After Rent Free, I was back in T3 for a little bit before I got picked up by Joe Esports. We did not do very well in Challenger League, and we ended up just disbanding as a team. After that, it was back to T3, and then I joined Slaughterhouse for a little while, or Oblation, who got picked up by Slaughterhouse. I didn't play in CL with them because before CL started, that's when I was picked up from Mirage, and here we are.
Cool. So you mentioned a little bit how you went from console to PC, and I've been hearing that story a lot lately. So how did that transition happen? Did you want to come over from console so you could try to become pro, or how did that all come about?
When I was on console, I wasn't too involved in like the community, but I watched a lot of Pro League. That was like the dream for me. So I mean, I switched pretty late. I was 19 when I switched to PC. So it's kind of late to get into the scene, but I mean, I don't know. It was one of my dreams. I kind of just grinded to it. I made it work with my schedule. I had school, I had work, and then I had scrims and practice. So that's basically all I did.
Did you have any like mentors that you looked up to that kind of made you be like, I want to do what they're doing and become pro?
When I was on console, I kind of just looked up to the big name players. Canadian, I mean, he was like the one guy that was like made me really want to play because it's just like the competitiveness that he showed and just the energy he brought to the stage was like really awesome. So that's kind of the main guy for me.
Yeah. Oh, I think he's the main guy for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit how you were in Challenger League for a bit, then you went to Mirage. How did that all come about? Like, what was the path from just being in CL and not really performing the best to actually joining an NAL team?
I mean, the main reason would be FPL, and the guys on Mirage have told me that. They've already said it's like, yeah, we never really looked at your CL stats or CL performances, but they just saw me popping off in FPL, ended up giving me a tryout, and the tryout went pretty well, so they picked me up, and I drove out here and performed pretty well.
So you talked about, them really looking at you in FPL. So how did that happen? Like, you're just performing well consistently in FPL and they're just like messaging you in your DMs, or did you hit them up? Like, how does that come about?
I didn't really get any contact from them until like right before the tryout. I didn't know anything. I was kind of just with Slaughterhouse, scrimming, practicing, and then one day they kind of just messaged me. It's like, yo, do you want to try out? And it was kind of weird for me because it was like getting the opportunity and then just seeing the difference between like a CL level team and a PL level. With like the biggest difference for me was the comms between the two teams and like all the CL teams I've been on as opposed to Mirage. It's just a high like improvement or upgrade. So that was like the biggest difference.
And do you think with FPL, like you mentioned, do you think the ability to kind of play with some of these other pros or people that you could kind of talk to and they could kind of learn more about you, and so you could show your consistency, but also show more than just your play, like who you are as a person? Do you think that is what really contributed to them kind of taking a liking to you?
So playing FPL as like a CL player, aspiring to be in Pro League, I think the main factor of if you're getting noticed or not is how seriously you take it. Obviously, like in the earlier seasons, I will say there was a lot more pros playing it, and like having that exposure and being able to take it like a scrim environment, it was like a really big part of me getting a tryout because just of how competitive it was and how everyone took it basically like a scrim, but not a scrim, you know. It had that same kind of feel to it.
And we've seen that continuously happen. You know, you're someone who got noticed from FPL. Razor's the last person who got noticed from FPL who just got picked up from XSET, and I think it kind of just goes to show like being consistent at a high level of play, and seeing who people are as people, versus just a CL game where you don't really know what's going on with the entire team or anything like that. I think it really shows the people behind the screen.
Yeah, definitely. Because you can't really see the same things you do in a CL game, right? Because I mean, I went 1-9 with Joe, and it's like, oh, this guy sucks. But I mean, if you're just watching the game, you don't know what's going on really. So I mean, being FPL is more of like, because there would be over 100 games per season, like the amount of games we played and the consistency you have to show to like people like me, Razor, Kino, Yaga. Those are like the main four that I can think of, because I don't think I was told, I can't really remember correctly, but I mean, I know he didn't have the most standout CL performances either. But I mean, he was nasty in FPL, and now he's on OXG, so it does mean something, FPL. You shouldn't go into it just not caring or not giving 100%.
Yeah, you guys have all been performing really well in the NAL, and it's crazy to think about how many other people in the past that might have been passed up because they haven't had a shot to show how good they could really be on a good structured team, like most pro teams are compared to CL teams.
That was one of the main points for me. It was like, I've never had the amount of structure that I have now with Mirage, so it's kind of just weird as like a newcomer getting thrown into that sort of team. And I mean, it was an adjustment, but definitely an adjustment for the better. And yeah, like you said, with like people in the past, a lot of other people that had the talent never got the exposure because FPL wasn't really a thing. There's no other way to really get yourself out there and play with pros like that besides like ranked. So I mean, it's definitely a really good tool for scouting new talent.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned you drove to your team house.
Yeah.
What was it like to drive to a team house, be in a team house for the first time, and compete on LAN, instead of online for a Challenger League season?
So I guess I drove here. It was 30 hours, a 30-hour drive, and it was really cool just experiencing other parts. Like I've never been anywhere on the West Coast, so it's all been new experiences, and like being in the team house, meeting everyone. There's Christian in the back just staring at me. So it's been really cool meeting everybody and kind of like forming bonds with people in person rather than just like online, and also meeting everyone else in the other teams, because like I've known some of these guys for years, and finally seeing them, even like people from back on PS4 that I knew, seeing them now in Pro League. So it's like a really cool experience. And then playing on LAN is definitely very different from playing online. I think I adjusted to that pretty well. Like I knew the differences going into it. I've just never played on it. So it was definitely something I had to adjust to, and it was like there were times where I was like, oh, that's an online peak, where I swung something and died, where like I shouldn't have swung it, but I just did, and I was like, yeah, I can't do that on LAN. So
it shows that you adapted well to because a lot of people say it's completely different games, online versus LAN.
It is for sure.
So you've played FPL since the first season. Your first season you were runner-up for first place. You've always been a fantastic player in FPL and performed well. Do you have any along the way? Have you had any like fun or cool stories that you've come across of like certain games or anything like that?
There's definitely a lot of fun moments playing with like pros back when I was like the first few seasons as like an upper-coming CL player, and just kind of like getting that exposure. I'd hit like a nasty shot or a crazy clip, and like people would be hyping me up, and it's just like it's really cool having that exposure and playing with pros like that. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different moments like that. I can't I can't really name any specifics, but I mean, it was just really cool in general, popping off with like pros and getting exposure in that way.
And how does it feel now that you were in that position as a CL player and trying to get these pros' attentions, and now you have all these CL players and Tier 3 players trying to get your attention as a Pro League player?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about because it's like not being in Pro League and looking up to Pro League players, and then being in Pro League, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm a Pro League player, but it's just like I'm still just Benjimoola, so nothing's really changed. I don't really, I haven't thought about it's like people look at me differently or like people look up to me because I'm a Pro League, but it's like, I don't know. It's just crazy to think about.
I mean, it definitely is. And let's talk a little bit about you guys' last stage as a team, Mirage. You guys performed very well, and you guys blew everyone's expectations away.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys, towards the end of season 2, you guys went on a monster run, amazing comebacks. What was, kind of the secret sauce for you guys?
So starting out, the first 3 games in the season didn't go too well. I mean, they didn't go bad. Like Dark Zero, we probably should have closed that game out, but we didn't really play how we knew we could towards the end of that game. And then OXG and TSM. OXG was closer than the score showed, but we just couldn't close the rounds out. TSM, we got smoked. And then the win streak, it was kind of like we just kept on clutching rounds. Like against TSM, we had probably, I don't even know, I think maybe 3 clutches that kept us in the game. I know Dream had one in a living room bomb site. Hot and Cold had one on Aviator where he killed like 3 guys pushing down Books Hall. He got a collateral, and it was just like, we probably shouldn't have won that round, but I mean, we made it happen. And then Loading closed out the game with the run into Study and killing the bot planner. So that was a huge game. And then just, I mean, overall, we just kept on battling. I think XSET was another game. Probably should have closed it out sooner. Still got our 2 points. Beast Coast was also on club. I don't know. I think just during the win streak, we kind of just kept building momentum and gaining confidence. There's a lot of individual improvements. I know Not Loading started off kind of slow in the season. He's sitting right next to me. And he was able to make really big improvements. And that's just like coming onto a land build and kind of experiencing the game in that way. The nerves a little bit.
Yeah, what's the atmosphere like? Like you mentioned, where you guys went on multiple, clutch situations. You guys pulled it out and won. What's the atmosphere like after your teammate pulls off a round you shouldn't have won? Like, do you guys just have so much momentum where you just push through?
Pretty much, yeah. After a clutch round like that, everybody's really hyped. The vibes are like really high, especially Hot and Cold. He would go crazy. The one round, because I sit next to him. The one round where he won on Aviator, killed 3 guys Books Hall. He was out of his chair, jumping, like he was yelling. And it was really hype, and we just kind of rode that momentum into finishing out that game, onto the next game, all the way to the end of the season. We were just feeling really hot.
So, what are yours as a player, short-term and long-term goals?
Short-term goals probably be getting top 4 again. That's the goal for this next season. Long-term, I'd want to go to an SI for sure. I want to go to SI and just compete to the highest level we can. Win it, hopefully, maybe. You never know.
Yeah.
That's a long-term goal for sure.
I think you guys are definitely on the road to do so. And you guys have a great supporting staff there around you where you guys are able to prepare and get better. A lot of teams starting off 0-3 don't really bring it back, especially if they're a new team like you guys did. So that's pretty cool to see, and excited to see the future. I want to thank you for sitting down today. And FPL is ones to watch, and be able to talk a little bit about your career and see everything in the future that's coming up. Before we go, do you have any messages to your fans or anyone out there?
Yeah, just shout out all of our fans supporting us, all my friends and family back home supporting me. Shout out to Under Armour, our sponsor. Code Benji, 10% off if you guys want to buy some merch. Shout out just to Mirage as the org. They've been really great getting us out here and just helping us out with whatever we need. And yeah, thanks Tanner for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.